The 4th of July was supposed to be the brightest night at the Caldwell estate. Flags waved above the white columns, fireworks waited in the dark sky, and millionaires laughed under golden lights as if nothing painful could ever touch them. But behind the music, the champagne, and the smell of expensive barbecue, Lily Harper stood in an old blue maid uniform, carrying drinks for people who never even bothered to learn her name. For 3 months, she had cared for Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire heir. After a terrible head injury almost broke him, she brought him medicine, sat beside him through sleepless nights, and held him steady when even his own family stayed away from his pain. And somewhere between his fever, his silence, and her quiet kindness, Ethan fell in love with the one woman his world would never accept. But love became cruelty the moment his rich friends turned her into a joke. "Come on, Ethan," one of them laughed. "If you like the maid so much, kiss her." Everyone watched. Some smirked. Some waited for Lily to be humiliated. And Ethan, blinded by pride and desire, pulled her close and kissed her in front of the entire Independence Day party. The fireworks exploded above them. Then Lily slapped him so hard the whole garden went silent. If this story has already caught your heart, stay with us and subscribe, because that slap was not the end of their love. It was the beginning of a wound neither of them knew how to heal. Lily ran away that night, believing she had been nothing more than a rich man's entertainment. But Ethan would soon discover that losing her hurt more than any injury he had ever survived. But to understand why that kiss destroyed everything, we have to go back to the moment Lily Harper walked into the Caldwell estate that evening, wearing an old blue maid uniform and carrying a silver tray that felt heavier than it should have. The 4th of July's sun had not fully disappeared yet, but the mansion was already glowing like a palace built for people who had never worried about rent, hospital bills, or the price of medicine. Red, white, and blue ribbons wrapped around the white columns. American flags moved gently in the warm summer wind. Long tables were covered with crystal glasses, expensive wine, grilled lobster, smoked ribs, and desserts decorated like tiny flags. Somewhere near the lawn, a live band played a soft country version of the national anthem, while wealthy guests laughed as if the whole world had been made only for their comfort. Lily moved through them quietly. She had learned how to disappear in rooms like this, keep her head slightly lowered, smile only when spoken to, never stand too close, never look offended, even when someone talked about her as if she could not hear. For 3 months, that had been her life inside the Caldwell estate. She cleaned the bedrooms, folded the towels, served the meals, and at night, when the house finally went silent, she cared for the one man everyone else seemed afraid to touch. Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire heir, the golden son of one of the richest families on the East Coast, the man whose name appeared in business magazines, charity galas, and gossip columns. 3 months earlier, a riding accident had left him with a serious head injury. Doctors said he was lucky to survive. His mother called it a private family crisis. His friends sent flowers and whiskey, but Lily was the one who sat beside him when his hand shook from pain. Lily was the one who brought him medicine at 2 in the morning. Lily was the one who stayed outside his door when he could not sleep, just so he would know he was not alone. And now he was standing across the lawn in a navy suit, perfectly healed, perfectly handsome, and watching her like she was the only person at the party. Lily felt his gaze before she saw it. She kept walking, balancing the tray, pretending not to notice. That was safer. Ethan Caldwell belonged to a world where men like him could be kind in private and silent in public. Lily had known that from the beginning. A man could thank you in the dark and forget your name under the lights. "Careful, sweetheart," one of the guests said, as Lily passed with a tray of champagne. "That glass probably cost more than your weekly paycheck." A few people laughed. Lily tightened her fingers around the tray but said nothing. She had heard worse. Poverty taught people many things, but the first lesson was silence. Silence kept jobs. Silence paid bills. Silence protected sick grandmothers waiting back home in Kentucky. From the other side of the lawn, Ethan saw her shoulders stiffen. He should have walked over then. He should have told the man to apologize. He should have made it clear that Lily was not something his guests could step on for amusement. But Ethan stayed where he was, trapped between the old habits of his world and the new feeling growing inside him. That hesitation was the first mistake of the night. Near the bar, Blake Harrington lifted his glass and followed Ethan's gaze. Blake had been Ethan's friend since college, the kind of friend rich men kept too long because no one ever forced them to grow up. He was handsome, loud, cruel when bored, and always surrounded by people willing to laugh at anything he said. "Well, I'll be damned," Blake said, grinning. "You are staring at the maid." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Drop it." But Blake smelled weakness like blood in water. He turned slightly, making sure the others could hear. "No, seriously. 3 months locked up in this mansion and the great Ethan Caldwell falls for the girl bringing towels and painkillers?" More laughter, softer this time, but sharper. Lily heard it. She was setting down a glass of lemonade for an older woman near the garden chairs when Blake's voice carried across the lawn. "Come on, Ethan," he called. "It's Independence Day. Be brave. If you like her so much, kiss her." The air changed. It was small at first. A few heads turned, then more. Conversations thinned. Music kept playing, but it sounded suddenly far away. Lily froze with the empty tray against her waist. Heat rose to her face, not from the summer night, but from the horrible realization that she had become the entertainment. Margaret Caldwell, Ethan's mother, stood near the veranda in a cream dress, watching with cold eyes. She did not laugh, but she did not stop it either. That was almost worse. Ethan looked at Lily. For 1 second, something real passed between them. Regret, desire, fear, maybe even love. But love, when mixed with pride, can become something ugly before a person realizes what he has done. Blake raised his glass higher. "Unless the billionaire is scared of his own feelings." The guest chuckled. Ethan moved. Lily barely had time to step back before he crossed the lawn and stood in front of her. Up close, he looked different from the man she had cared for in the dark bedroom. There was no fever on his skin now, no bandage around his head, no weakness in his eyes. He looked powerful, certain, almost desperate. "Ethan," Lily whispered, low enough that only he could hear. "Don't." That one word should have stopped him. It did not. He took the tray from her hands, set it on the nearest table, and pulled her toward him. Gasps rose around them. Someone laughed. Someone murmured, "Oh my God." And then Ethan Caldwell kissed the maid in front of every rich guest at his 4th of July party. At that exact moment, the first firework exploded above the estate. Red light burst across the sky, then white, then blue. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Lily heard none of it clearly. All she felt was the pressure of Ethan's hand at her waist, the shock of his mouth on hers, and the crushing shame of knowing that people were watching, not because they believed in love, but because they wanted a scandal. For 3 months, she had held his pain with tenderness. In 1 second, he had handed her dignity to a laughing crowd. Lily shoved him away. The garden went still. Ethan stared at her, breathing hard, as if he had only just returned to himself. Lily's eyes were bright with tears, but her voice did not break. "You didn't kiss me because you love me," she said. "You kissed me because they dared you to." Then she slapped him. The sound cut through the music, the laughter, even the fireworks. Ethan's face turned with the force of it. No one moved. Not Blake, not Margaret, not the guests who had been so eager to watch a poor girl be humiliated. Lily stood there for 1 more second, trembling not from weakness, but from the effort it took not to fall apart in front of them. Then she turned and ran. Ethan did not follow immediately. He stood frozen on the lawn, one hand slowly rising to the red mark on his cheek. Above him, the sky kept exploding in celebration of freedom, while the only woman who had ever made him feel human was running from his house as if it had become a prison. And for the first time that night, Ethan Caldwell understood something terrible. The slap had not been the punishment. The punishment was the silence she left behind. By the time he found the courage to go after her, Lily's small room near the service hallway was already empty. Her bed was made. Her old uniform was folded neatly on the chair. The little bottle of headache pills she used to place beside his bed every night sat on the windowsill. And on the pillow, there was no letter. Only the hair clip he had once told her was beautiful. Ethan picked it up with shaking fingers. not knowing that before the sun rose, Lily Harper would be on a bus back to Kentucky, carrying a broken heart, a secret debt, and a promise to never let a rich man turn her into a joke again. Before that hair clip was left on Ethan Caldwell's pillow like the last piece of a broken promise, there had been 3 months of quiet nights, bitter medicine, and a kind of tenderness neither he nor Lily Harper dared to name. The accident happened in early April, on a road outside the Caldwell estate, after a charity polo event that had ended with too much rain and too many proud men pretending they were not tired. Ethan's horse had spooked near the lower trail, throwing him hard against a stone marker before anyone could reach him. By the time the ambulance arrived, blood had dried near his temple, his breathing was uneven, and Margaret Caldwell was standing beneath a black umbrella, giving orders with a voice so controlled it sounded almost empty. The doctors saved him, but they could not give him back to himself immediately. For weeks, Ethan lived inside pain. Light hurt his eyes. Sudden sounds made his skull feel like it was splitting open. Sometimes he forgot simple words. Sometimes anger came faster than thought, and he would snap at anyone who stepped too close. Nurses came and went. Private specialists were hired. His mother brought in the best doctors money could find, but she never stayed long in the room when the headaches began. Margaret Caldwell loved her son in the polished way rich families often loved each other, through arrangements, payments, and closed doors. Lily Harper had only been working at the estate for 4 days when she first heard something break upstairs. She had been folding towels in the service laundry when the crash echoed through the hallway, followed by a muffled curse. One of the senior maids stopped, listened, and shook her head. "Mr. Caldwell again," she muttered. "Best not to go in unless you want a glass thrown at you." But Lily went anyway. She did not know him then, not really. She knew the headlines, of course. Everyone knew Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire heir with the perfect jawline and the impossible life. She had seen his face on magazine covers and grocery store checkout lines back in Kentucky, the kind of man people looked at for 2 seconds and assumed had never lost anything that mattered. When Lily opened the door to his room, she found him sitting on the edge of the bed, one hand pressed against his head. Shattered glass scattered across the hardwood floor. Water was spreading under the nightstand. His breathing was harsh, and his eyes were squeezed shut like even the dim lamp beside him was too bright. "I said get out," he snapped. Lily did not move closer. She did not flinch either. "You're bleeding," she said. His eyes opened slightly. "I'm always bleeding from somewhere lately. That doesn't mean we leave it there." Something in her voice made him look at her, not because she was soft. She was not soft in the way people expected poor women to be when standing in rich men's bedrooms. She was calm, steady, like a person who had seen worse than broken glass and knew panic, never cleaned anything up. She crossed the room, pulled a towel from the chair, and wrapped it around her hand, before kneeling to pick up the sharp pieces. Ethan watched her in silence. Most people rushed around him now, trying too hard to sound cheerful or professional. Lily did neither. She simply cleaned the floor, wiped the spilled water, and placed a fresh glass on the table. Then she looked at him and asked, "Where does it hurt the most?" The question was so simple that Ethan almost laughed. No one asked him that anymore. Doctors asked for numbers from 1 to 10. His mother asked if he had taken the pills. His friends asked when he was coming back. But this woman, this new maid with tired eyes in a blue uniform a little too large at the shoulders, asked where it hurt. "My head," he said after a while, "behind the right eye." Lily nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. "Then turn off that lamp. It's too sharp." "It's a lamp. It's too sharp," she repeated. He stared at her. She stared back. Finally, Ethan reached over and turned it off. That was the first night he slept more than 2 hours. After that, Lily became the one person the staff called when Ethan refused medicine, when he locked his door, when pain made him cruel enough that no one else wanted to risk being near him. She never treated him like a monster, but she never let him behave like one either. If he shouted, she lowered her voice. If he insulted her, she waited until he was done and said, "You can be in pain without being mean." The first time she said it, Ethan looked at her as if no one had ever spoken to him that directly in his entire life. "Do you always talk to your employer like that?" he asked. "No," Lily replied. adjusting the glass of water on his tray. Only the ones acting like spoiled boys. He should have fired her. Instead, he took the medicine. The days were slow, measured by headaches, doctor visits, and the small rituals Lily created without announcing them. Ginger tea at 7, pain medication at 10, curtains half open after lunch. Never before. Soft music only if he asked. No strong cologne from visitors. No loud conversations outside the bedroom. When Ethan's vision blurred, she read to him from whatever book sat on the table. Even if it was a boring history of American railroads or a biography of some dead oil tycoon his father had admired. At first, Ethan listened only because he could not stand silence. Then he began listening because of her voice. Lily's voice carried Kentucky in it, not heavy, not exaggerated, just enough to make certain words warmer than they should have been. She read slowly when his head hurt. She paused when he closed his eyes. She never asked if he was asleep. She simply stayed until his breathing changed. One night, during a thunderstorm, Ethan woke from a nightmare so violently that he knocked the water glass off the table. He was back on the trail, back in the rain, back with the sound of bone and stone inside his skull. Lily came in wearing a gray sweater over her uniform, her hair clipped back with the same small brown hair clip he would later find on his pillow. "You're at home," she said before he could speak. "You're in your room. It's Thursday night. The storm is outside, not in here." Ethan gripped the blanket like a child. He hated that she saw him that way. He hated even more that her voice helped. "Don't tell anyone," he said. Lily picked up the glass, set it aside, and sat in the chair near the door. "About what?" He looked at her. She looked out the window. And for the first time since the accident, Ethan felt protected without feeling pitied. That was when something dangerous began. Not all at once. Not like fireworks. It grew quietly, in moments so small he could pretend they meant nothing. Lily standing on a chair to change the air filter because dust made his headaches worse. Lily laughing once, under her breath, when he complained about hospital oatmeal, as if it were a personal attack. Lily falling asleep in the hallway with a book open in her lap because he had asked her not to leave until the pain passed. He began to notice things he had no right to notice. The scar near her thumb, the way she counted the steps under her breath when she was anxious, the fact that she never accepted extra money from him unless it was official pay through the household manager. Once, he tried to slip a folded $100 bill under her teacup. She placed it back beside his hand without blinking. "I'm not for tipping," she said. "I was trying to thank you, then say thank you." So he did. And she accepted that. Margaret noticed before Ethan admitted it to himself. His mother saw everything that threatened the shape of the Caldwell name. One afternoon, she entered his room after Lily had gone downstairs and found Ethan staring at the door like a man waiting for sunlight to return. "She's Staff, Ethan," Margaret said. He did not turn around. "She has a name." "That is exactly what worries me." The words sat between them, cold and clean. Margaret crossed the room and adjusted the flowers on his table, though they did not need adjusting. "You are recovering. Pain makes people attach themselves to whoever is near. Don't confuse gratitude with affection." Ethan gave a short laugh. "You think I don't know the difference? I think men in this family have always been reckless when they feel lonely." That sentence carried history he did not want to unpack. His father, his grandfather, affairs, settlements, quiet scandals buried under charity donations. Ethan looked away. Margaret softened her voice, which somehow made it sharper. "A woman like Lily Harper does not belong in your world, and if you let her think she does, you will hurt her more than anyone else could." For days after that, Ethan tried to create distance. He spoke less. He asked for another nurse. He told Lily she did not need to sit outside his door at night anymore. Lily only nodded. She did not ask why. That bothered him most. Then, one evening, his headache returned so violently that he vomited twice and nearly collapsed near the bathroom. The new nurse panicked. Margaret was at a dinner in the city. The doctor was 40 minutes away. Lily found him on the floor, pale and shaking, and dropped to her knees beside him. "Look at me," she said. "Breathe with me." "I told you not to come," he muttered. "You also told the nurse you were fine. Clearly, you're not a reliable source." Even in pain, he almost smiled. She stayed with him until the doctor arrived. She cleaned his face, changed his shirt, sat beside him while the medication worked. When the room finally settled into darkness, Ethan turned his head slightly and whispered, "Why do you stay?" Lily did not answer right away. Outside, summer insects tapped softly against the window screen. The estate was quiet, but not peaceful. Big houses had a way of holding secrets in the walls. "Because I know what it feels like," she said finally. "To be sick? To have people around you and still feel like nobody is really there." Ethan looked at her then, truly looked. "Back home?" Lily's face changed at the words, just enough for him to see the door closing. "Kentucky," she said. "Small town by the river. My grandmother raised me." "Your parents?" Not part of the story. It was the kind of answer that warned him not to push. For once, he listened. But over the following weeks, pieces of Lily's life slipped out in quiet fragments. Her grandmother, Nora, had a heart condition. Medical bills had swallowed everything. Lily had left home because staying meant watching the debt grow and doing nothing. There was a man named Caleb Reed, though she never explained him clearly. Ethan only knew that whenever a call from Kentucky came, Lily's face tightened before she answered. Once, he heard her in the hallway. "I said I'll send what I can," she whispered into the phone. "No, Caleb, I didn't forget. I know what your father did for us. I know." When she came back into the room, Ethan pretended he had not heard. That was another mistake, not because privacy was wrong, but because silence can become cowardice when someone you love is being cornered. By June, Ethan could walk the garden paths again. Lily was no longer assigned to his room every hour, but he found reasons to cross her path. He asked for coffee he did not want. He sat in the library while she dusted shelves. He came down to breakfast earlier because she was usually in the kitchen then, tying her apron and pretending not to see him watching. Blake Harrington returned to the estate during that time, loud and careless as ever. He clapped Ethan on the shoulder, joked about his dramatic little head injury, and immediately noticed Lily carrying fresh towels through the hall. "Well," Blake said, lowering his voice, but not enough. "Recovery looks better than I expected." Ethan's expression hardened. "Don't." Blake laughed. "Relax. I'm saying she's pretty. Nothing illegal about having eyes. She works here." "Exactly. Convenient." Ethan should have ended the friendship in that moment. Instead, he walked away. He told himself ignoring Blake was better than making a scene. But Lily had heard enough from the stairwell to understand what kind of world Ethan came from, and how often men like Blake turned women like her into entertainment. That night, as she brought Ethan his last dose of medication, she was quieter than usual. "What did he say to you?" Ethan asked. "Nothing I haven't heard before. That doesn't make it acceptable." "No," she said, setting the pills down. "But you still let him say it." The truth landed harder than an accusation. Ethan looked at her. "Lily?" She shook her head. "I can care about you when you're hurting. I can bring medicine, sit in the hallway, make sure the lights don't cut into your eyes, but I need you to understand something." He waited. "I am not something you get to hide in the dark and be ashamed of in the daylight." Ethan stood very still. "I'm not ashamed of you," he said. "Then don't make me guess that." She left before he could answer. For the rest of June, Ethan tried, in small ways, clumsy ways. He asked the household manager to stop assigning Lily the hardest late-night tasks after she had already worked 12 hours. He corrected a guest who called her the girl instead of her name. He thanked her in front of the kitchen staff, but he still did not fully understand that respect was not a favor. It was the bare minimum. And love, real love, would require more from him than private tenderness. On the morning of July 4th, Lily woke before sunrise. The estate was already restless. Caterers arrived. Florists filled the veranda with red and white roses. Workers hung lights across the lawn. Margaret inspected every detail, like a general preparing for war. To the Caldwell family, Independence Day was not just a holiday. It was a performance of power, wrapped in patriotism. Lily ironed her old blue uniform twice. It still looked worn at the cuffs. She clipped her hair back, checked on Nora's last message, and stood for one quiet moment in the service bathroom, breathing through a feeling she could not name. Something about that day felt dangerous. At noon, Ethan found her near the back pantry, arranging trays of lemonade. "You okay?" he asked. She did not look up. "Busy?" "That's not what I asked." She finally turned. He looked almost fully recovered now, handsome in a way that made people forgive him before he apologized. But Lily had seen him broken. She knew beauty did not protect anyone from weakness. "Your friends will be here tonight," she said. His face changed. "Blake doesn't matter. He matters if you let him." Ethan stepped closer, then stopped himself. "I won't." Lily wanted to believe him. That was the worst part. Wanting to believe a man was sometimes more dangerous than knowing he would fail. By sunset, the estate filled with music, laughter, expensive perfume, and the easy cruelty of people who had never been afraid of losing shelter. Lily worked the lawn with the other staff, but every few minutes she felt Ethan's eyes find her. There was warmth there, longing, something almost tender. But tenderness without courage is a fragile thing. By the time the fireworks were ready and Blake raised his glass with that cruel, joking challenge, Ethan had 3 months of love inside him, and no idea how to carry it honorably in public. He heard the laughter, saw Lily's face, felt his pride flare like a match struck too close to dry grass. And then he made the choice that would cost him her. Hours later, after the slap, after the silence, after Lily's empty room, Ethan sat alone on the edge of her narrow bed, with her hair clip in his hand. The house outside her door continued moving around him. Guests were leaving. Cars rolled down the driveway. Somewhere downstairs, Margaret was likely explaining away the scandal, in a voice smooth enough to make shame sound like inconvenience. Ethan did not move. He kept seeing Lily's face in the garden, not angry first, hurt first. That was what destroyed him. The slap had come after the hurt. The slap was only the sound her pain made when it finally reached the surface. He went to the security office himself. The night guard stood quickly when Ethan entered, but Ethan only pointed at the monitors. "Show me the back gate footage." The guard hesitated. "Sir, I don't know if—" "No." The footage appeared in grainy black and white. Timestamp, 10:42 p.m. Lily crossed the service courtyard with one small suitcase. She still wore the blue uniform, but the apron was gone. Her shoulders were straight. She did not look back at the mansion, not once. At the gate, she stopped. For one terrible second, Ethan leaned closer to the screen, hoping she had changed her mind, hoping she had looked back, hoping there was still a thread between them that had not snapped. But Lily only reached into her hair, removed the clip, and held it in her palm. The camera had no sound, yet Ethan could feel the silence around her. She placed the hair clip on the stone ledge beside the gate, wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand, and walked into the dark beyond the estate lights. Ethan stood there long after the screen froze. The guard said nothing. No one in that room could have understood what Ethan understood then. Lily had not left because she did not love him. She had left because she believed loving him would cost her the one thing poverty had not taken from her, yet her dignity. And by morning, while the Caldwell estate was still cleaning champagne glasses and burned-out fireworks from the lawn, Lily Harper was on a bus headed south, back toward Kentucky, back toward a debt she had never told Ethan about, and toward a wedding she never wanted. Ethan did not know that yet, but he would. And when he finally found her, she would be wearing white for another man. Lily did not go home because she was safe there. She went home because heartbreak made the place she feared most feel like the only place she had left. The bus rolled south through the night, away from the Caldwell estate, away from the fireworks, away from the man whose kiss had turned her pain into a public spectacle. Lily sat near the back with her suitcase pressed against her knees and her coat folded over her lap. Even though the July air inside the bus was warm and heavy, she had not cried when she left the mansion. She had not cried when the lights of the estate disappeared behind her. But every time the bus passed a gas station window and she saw her own reflection, she remembered Ethan's hand at her waist, the laughter around them, and the shock in his eyes after she slapped him. That was the part that hurt most. He had looked surprised, as if he had not understood that a poor woman could still have something sacred enough to defend. By sunrise, Kentucky opened around her in long stretches of green fields, narrow roads, old barns, and small towns where flags still hung from porches after the 4th of July. Everything looked familiar, but not comforting. Home had never been gentle to Lily Harper. It had raised her, yes, but it had also counted every dollar she did not have and reminded her of every debt she could not outrun. Her grandmother's house stood at the end of a gravel road near the river, small and white, with peeling paint around the windows and a porch that leaned slightly to one side. Nora Harper was waiting outside before the taxi even stopped. She was thinner than Lily remembered, wrapped in a faded robe despite the summer heat, one hand pressed against her chest, as if love itself had made her heart work too hard. "Baby," Nora whispered. Lily dropped the suitcase and ran to her. For a moment, she was not the maid who had been humiliated in front of millionaires. She was just a tired granddaughter, holding the only person who had ever loved her without conditions. Nora touched Lily's face, studying her eyes. "What happened up there?" Lily forced a smile. "I quit. People don't come home looking like that because they quit." Lily looked away toward the river, where the morning light moved across the water, like something trying to heal itself. "I don't want to talk about him." Nora did not ask who him was. Women who had lived long enough did not need every wound explained to know where it came from. For 2 days, Lily tried to disappear into ordinary things. She swept the porch, changed Nora's sheets, cooked soup, walked to the small grocery store, and ignored every curious stare from neighbors who had already heard she was back. In a town like Mill Creek, silence traveled faster than truth. By the second afternoon, people were whispering that Lily Harper had lost her fancy job in New York. By evening, someone had added that a rich man was involved. Then Caleb Reed came to the house. He arrived in a clean white pickup truck, wearing a pale blue shirt and a smile that looked kind from far away. Caleb had grown up in Mill Creek with the easy confidence of a man whose family owned the feed store, half the rental houses, and most of the favors people were too ashamed to talk about. His father had paid part of Nora's hospital bill 2 years earlier, when Lily had been desperate and the bank had already said no. Back then, Caleb called it help. Later, he began calling it loyalty. Eventually, he started calling it a promise. Lily met him on the porch before he could step inside. "Caleb," she said. His eyes moved over her face, then down to her empty hands. "You came back without calling." "I came back to see my grandmother, and to settle things, I hope." Her fingers tightened around the porch rail. "There's nothing to settle." Caleb's smile did not leave, but something behind it hardened. "Lily, my family carried yours when no one else would. Dad didn't have to sign that hospital check. I didn't have to wait for you while you ran off to serve champagne to rich people. I worked," she said. "I sent money every month, and still not enough." The words landed exactly where he meant them to. Lily glanced toward the front window. Nora was inside, pretending not to listen, which meant she heard every word. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Marry me, and the debt disappears. Your grandmother keeps the house. No lawyers, no shame, no more running." Lily stared at him. There were many kinds of cages. Some had locks, some had vows. "I don't love you," she said. Caleb's smile faded at last. "Love is what people talk about when they can afford to be foolish. You and I are not those people." That night, Nora cried quietly in the kitchen, not because she wanted Lily to marry Caleb, but because poverty had a cruel way of making innocent people feel guilty for needing to survive. Lily knelt beside her grandmother's chair and held her hands. "I'll fix it," Lily whispered. Nora shook her head. "Not with your life." But by morning, Caleb had already spoken to the pastor. By afternoon, his mother had brought over a simple white dress, folded in tissue paper like a gift, and placed on Lily's bed like a sentence. The wedding would be small, they said, respectable. Sunday after service, people would understand, people would approve. Lily stood in front of the mirror and looked at the dress. She had once thought the worst thing a man could do was make her feel like a joke in front of strangers. Now she understood there was something worse, being turned into payment for a kindness that had never truly been free. Far away, Ethan Caldwell was learning how little money mattered when the one thing he wanted could not be bought. He had called the household manager, the bus stations, even the employment agency that had first sent Lily to the estate. No one gave him much at first. Some because they did not know. Others because they thought a woman who left a mansion in tears deserved the mercy of being hard to find. Finally, an old emergency contact in Lily's file gave him the town, Mill Creek, Kentucky. Ethan stared at the name for a long time. He could have sent someone. He could have hired an investigator, chartered a plane, arrived with lawyers and flowers and all the arrogant tools of his world. Instead, he drove himself. Not because it was noble, but because shame deserved a long road. Every mile gave him another chance to remember what he had done. By the time he reached Mill Creek, the Sunday church bells were already ringing. The town looked like a painting of America that had been left too long in the sun. White church, red brick diner, flags on every porch, kids riding bikes past pickup trucks. Old men sitting outside the hardware store, pretending not to gossip. Ethan parked across from the church and stepped out slowly, still stiff from the injury he had not fully respected. Then he saw the wooden sign near the church steps. Today we celebrate the union of Caleb Reed and Lily Harper. For a moment, Ethan could not breathe. Through the side window, he saw her. Lily stood inside the church hallway in a plain white dress, her hair pinned back, her face pale and beautiful in a way that broke something in him. She did not look like a happy bride. She looked like a woman walking toward a door she had been told was the only exit, even if it led to another prison. As if she felt him there, Lily turned. Their eyes met through the glass. Everything Ethan had driven hundreds of miles to say vanished from his mind. He saw the hurt, the warning, the love she was trying so hard to bury. Lily stepped back from the window. Then she disappeared into the church. Ethan stood outside beneath the bright Kentucky sun, hearing the bells, reading her name beside another man's, and realizing that finding Lily was only the beginning. Because this time, if he reached for her the wrong way, he would lose her forever. Ethan had crossed state lines to apologize, but the moment he stepped inside that church, he understood Lily was not waiting to be rescued. She was waiting for someone to finally see the cage around her. The little white church in Mill Creek smelled of old wood, summer flowers, and candle wax softened by the heat. Sunlight fell through the stained glass windows in broken colors, touching the worn pews, the faded hymnals, and the small crowd gathered as if this wedding were something simple and blessed. Women whispered behind paper fans. Men in pressed shirts stood near the aisle, nodding to each other with the quiet pride of people who believed they already knew the ending. Ethan stood at the back, out of place in his dark suit and city shoes, feeling every eye turned toward him. He had walked into boardrooms where billion-dollar deals were decided. He had faced investors, reporters, rivals, and lawyers who wanted to tear his family name apart. But nothing had ever made him feel as exposed as that small church, where the woman he loved stood only a few yards away in a white dress meant for another man. Lily did not look at him at first. She stood near the side door, with her hands folded tightly in front of her. The dress was plain, almost too plain, with sleeves that reached her elbows and a skirt that fell softly to the floor. There was no diamond necklace, no veil, no bright smile. Her hair was pinned back, but not with the brown clip he had found on his pillow. That absence hurt more than it should have. Caleb Reed stood near the altar, speaking with the pastor. He looked calm, handsome in the way small towns rewarded, with clean boots, a fresh haircut, and the confident posture of a man who had never been told no without finding a way to punish it. When he noticed Ethan, his eyes narrowed for less than a second before his smile returned. That smile told Ethan everything. Caleb was not surprised, not truly. He had been expecting some kind of trouble. Maybe not Ethan Caldwell himself, maybe not a billionaire walking into his church like a storm in a tailored suit, but he had expected Lily's heart to resist. Nora Harper sat in the first pew, one hand pressed to her chest, the other gripping a tissue. She looked at Ethan, then at Lily, and her face filled with a kind of exhausted sadness that made him lower his eyes. Whatever had brought them to this moment had not started today. It had been building for years, in hospital rooms, unpaid bills, quiet sacrifices, and favors that turned into chains. The pastor cleared his throat. "We'll begin in a few minutes." Lily moved quickly toward the hallway. Ethan followed. He did not call her name in front of everyone. He had learned at least that much. He did not grab her arm. He did not step too close. He simply found her in the narrow hallway behind the sanctuary, standing near a window that looked out toward the cemetery and the river road beyond it. "Lily," he said softly. She closed her eyes for 1 second, as if his voice hurt, because some part of her still wanted it. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." That made her turn. There was no patience in her face now, no gentleness left for him to hide behind. "Then why are you?" "Because I needed to tell you I'm sorry." Her laugh was small and broken. "You drove all the way from New York to say 2 words. "No," Ethan said. "I drove all the way here because those 2 words are the only ones I should have said before I ever touched you." Silence moved between them. From inside the church, someone coughed. A piano key sounded once, then stopped. The whole building seemed to be holding its breath. Lily looked down at her hands. "You embarrassed me in front of people who already thought I was beneath them." "I know." "No, Ethan, I don't think you do." Her voice shook, but she did not step back. "You don't know what it feels like to stand in a room full of rich people and realize they aren't laughing with you. They're laughing because they think you don't matter. They didn't see a woman. They saw a maid. They saw a dare." He swallowed hard. "I was wrong." "You were more than wrong." Her eyes lifted to his. "I cared for you when you couldn't stand the light. I sat outside your room so you wouldn't feel alone. I saw you weak, angry, scared, and I never used it against you. Then, the first time your friends made me small in public, you helped them." The words struck him more deeply than the slap ever had. "I thought if I kissed you, they would see you mattered to me," he said. Lily's expression changed, not softened, but sharpened with pain. "You thought your desire could protect my dignity. It couldn't. You made my dignity depend on whether a billionaire wanted me." Ethan had no answer. For once, he did not try to find one. Lily looked toward the sanctuary doors. "I have to go. Do you love him?" The question left him before he could stop it. He regretted it immediately, not because he did not need to know, but because he had no right to ask like that. Lily's face went still. "That is not the question," she said. "It is to me." "No." She stepped closer, her voice low and fierce. "The question is whether my grandmother gets to keep her house, whether a debt signed in fear gets to decide the rest of my life, whether people like Caleb can call control responsibility, and everyone in this town just nods because his family paid a hospital bill when mine couldn't." Ethan stared at her. There it was, the cage. Not romance, not choice, debt. "Lily," he said carefully, "let me help." Her eyes flashed. That's exactly what he said. The sentence stopped him cold. She saw it land and looked away, ashamed not of the truth but of how much it revealed. "Caleb's father helped with my grandmother's surgery. I was grateful. I still am. But gratitude turned into expectation, and expectation turned into a promise I don't remember making. You don't have to marry him. You don't get to say that like the world will catch me if I fall." Ethan took that in. He had spent his life protected by money, lawyers, property, reputation. Lily had none of that. For her, refusing a man like Caleb meant risking a home, a sick grandmother, a town's judgment, and the last bit of stability she had left. The sanctuary doors opened. Caleb stepped into the hallway. His smile was polite, but his eyes were not. "Everything all right back here?" Lily stiffened. Ethan turned. "We're talking." Caleb's gaze moved from Ethan to Lily. "Well, the wedding is waiting." "It can wait," Ethan said. Caleb gave a soft laugh. "That may be how things work where you come from, Mr. Caldwell. Around here, when people make promises, we expect them to keep them." Lily's face paled. Ethan noticed. So did Caleb. "Lily," Caleb said, still smiling, "your grandmother is asking for you." It was a cruel sentence because it sounded kind. Lily knew it. Ethan knew it. But half the people listening from the sanctuary door would only hear concern. Lily stepped away from Ethan. "Don't," Ethan said quietly. She looked back at him, and for a second the truth was naked in her eyes. She wanted to run. She wanted someone to tell her she could, but wanting freedom and being able to afford it were 2 different things. "I can't do this here," she whispered. Then she walked past Caleb, past the open door, past the curious faces, and straight out the side entrance of the church. No one stopped her. At first, people assumed the bride needed air. Brides cried. Brides panicked. Brides came back. But Ethan saw Caleb's jaw tighten. He saw Nora struggle to stand. He saw the pastor glance nervously toward the exit. And Ethan followed. The river was less than half a mile from the church, down a narrow road, lined with sycamore trees and wild grass. Lily had known that path since childhood. She had run it barefoot at 10 years old, angry at the world, without yet understanding why. She had sat on the bank at 16 after her first rejection letter from a scholarship committee. She had cried there the night the doctor told Nora she needed surgery they could not pay for. Now she reached the river in a white wedding dress and felt like the girl she had been at every age, cornered by a life that always seemed to ask for more than she had. The water moved slow and brown beneath the afternoon light. Cicadas screamed from the trees. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang once, then fell silent. Lily sank onto a flat stone near the bank, pressed both hands over her mouth, and finally let herself cry. Not neatly, not beautifully. She cried with her whole body, the way people cry when they have spent too long being brave in rooms where no one noticed the cost. She cried for Nora's hospital bills, for the job she had lost, for the kiss under the fireworks, for the version of Ethan she had wanted to believe in, for the girl she might have been if survival had not made every choice feel like another dead. "You look too pretty to be crying alone." The voice came from behind her. Lily went still. Duke Mason stood near the tree line. One shoulder leaned against a sycamore, a cigarette hanging from his mouth, though it was not lit. He was older than Caleb by a few years, rougher, with hard eyes and a reputation women in town spoke of only when they were warning each other. He had tried talking to Lily more than once when she was younger. She had never encouraged him. "Go away, Duke," she said, wiping her face quickly. He smiled. "That's not very friendly." "I'm not trying to be friendly." He pushed off the tree and walked closer. "I heard you ran out on Caleb. Bad idea. Reed family doesn't like being embarrassed." Lily stood. The hem of her dress caught on a weed, and she pulled it free. "Move." Duke's eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You always did think you were better than this place." "I said move." Instead, he stepped into the path. "Maybe you just need someone to remind you where you belong." Fear moved through Lily, cold and fast, but she refused to let it show. "If you touch me, I'll scream." Duke laughed. "Out here, with the river making all that noise?" He reached for her wrist. Lily twisted away and slapped his hand, but he grabbed the fabric near her sleeve and yanked her back. The dress tore at the seam. She stumbled, catching herself against his chest before shoving away with all her strength. "Let go of me." That was when Ethan saw them. He had followed the river road, breath tight in his chest, pain already burning through the side of his head from moving too fast. He reached the trees just in time to see Duke grab Lily again. Something in Ethan went quiet, not angry the way he had been at the party, not proud, not reckless for an audience. This was different. This was a clean, terrifying certainty. "Get your hands off her," Ethan said. Duke turned slowly. "Who the hell are you? The man telling you to let her go." Lily's eyes widened. "Ethan, don't." Duke shoved her aside. She fell back against the stone but caught herself before hitting the ground. Ethan moved between them. Duke looked him over and smirked. "You, the rich boy from the church?" Ethan did not answer. "Figures." Duke rolled his shoulders. "Men like you always think you can walk into a town and take whatever you want." Ethan's voice stayed low. "This isn't about taking. It's about leaving her alone." Duke swung first. Ethan blocked badly. His body was still recovering, his reflexes slower than they should have been. Duke's fist caught him near the jaw, snapping his head sideways. Pain flashed white behind his eyes. For half a second, the world tilted. Lily screamed his name. Ethan forced himself to stay upright. He hit Duke once in the ribs, then again in the shoulder. Duke stumbled, surprised that the rich man could fight at all. But Ethan's strength was uneven. He had fury, not endurance. 3 months of recovery had not rebuilt everything the accident had taken. Duke lunged again. They crashed into the dirt near the bank, rolling dangerously close to the water. Lily searched frantically for something, anything, and grabbed a fallen branch. "Stop," she shouted. "Both of you, stop!" Duke pulled something from his boot. A knife. The blade caught the sunlight for one sharp second. Ethan saw Lily move toward them and made his choice before thought could become fear. He stepped into Duke's path, pushing Lily behind him just as Duke thrust forward. The knife went into Ethan's side. Everything stopped. Lily heard herself scream, but it sounded far away, like the sound belonged to another woman in another life. Ethan looked down, almost confused, as red spread across his white shirt beneath the jacket. Duke stumbled backward, suddenly sober with terror. Lily rushed to Ethan as his knees buckled. "No, no, no," she cried, catching him as he fell against her. "Ethan, look at me. Stay with me." His body was heavy, too heavy. They sank together onto the riverbank, her white dress folding beneath him, the fabric turning crimson where she pressed her hands against the wound. Duke ran. Lily barely noticed. She pressed harder, shaking now, all the strength she had used to survive her own pain turning into desperation to keep him alive. "Help!" she screamed toward the road. "Somebody help us!" Ethan's eyes found hers. His face was pale, his breath shallow, but there was no panic in him. Only the same strange softness she had seen once in the dark room at the estate, when he had woken from a nightmare and trusted her voice to bring him back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't talk," Lily sobbed. "Please don't talk." His hand moved weakly, not to hold her, not to claim her, just to touch the torn sleeve of her dress as if he needed to know she was still there. "I didn't come to take you," he breathed. "I came because I couldn't let him hurt you." Her tears fell onto his face. "Ethan, stay awake." Sirens began somewhere far away, or maybe Lily only imagined them because she needed hope to have a sound. Ethan tried to breathe in, failed, and forced the last words out before darkness took him. "This time," he whispered, "I didn't kiss you to prove anything. I just wanted you to live." Then his eyes closed in Lily's arms, while the river kept moving beside them, as if the world had not just broken open. 3 months earlier, Lily had cared for Ethan through pain and darkness, but this time, as his blood stained her wedding dress, she realized she had never truly stopped loving him. The ambulance arrived with red lights flashing across the riverbank, painting the trees, the dirt road, and Lily's torn white dress in a color that looked too much like blood. She did not remember who called 911. Maybe someone from the church had heard her screaming. Maybe a fisherman downriver had seen Duke Mason running through the trees. All Lily knew was that one moment Ethan was heavy in her arms, his breath fading against her shoulder, and the next, paramedics were pulling her hands away from the wound she was trying desperately to hold closed. "No," she cried. "No, I have to keep pressure on it." "Ma'am, we've got him," one of the paramedics said. But she did not feel like they had him, not the way she had him. Not the way she knew the rhythm of his pain, the way his face changed when he was fighting consciousness, the way his right hand twitched when his body was trying to stay awake. To them, he was a patient. To Lily, he was every quiet night in that mansion, every bitter pill, every apology he had not yet finished saying. They lifted Ethan onto the stretcher. His face was pale beneath the summer dirt, his shirt soaked dark at the side. Lily tried to climb into the ambulance after him, but a deputy stepped in front of her. "Miss, we need to ask you some questions." Lily stared at him as if he had spoken another language. "He's dying. The ambulance will take him to County General. You can follow after we get a statement." "No." Her voice cracked, then hardened. "I am going with him." The deputy looked at her dress, her torn sleeve, the blood on her hands, and something in his expression shifted from authority to understanding. He moved aside. Lily climbed into the ambulance and sat where the paramedic told her to sit. She watched them work over Ethan, cutting away his shirt, attaching wires, calling out numbers she did not understand. The sirens screamed as they sped away from the river. Through the back window, Mill Creek blurred into trees, church steeples, and sunlight, but Lily saw none of it. She only saw Ethan. "Stay," she whispered, though he could not hear her. "You don't get to leave after saying something like that." At the hospital, everything became white lights and moving doors. Nurses took him one way. Lily was stopped at another. A doctor asked about allergies, medications, medical history. She knew more than she should have. Head injury 3 months ago. Light sensitivity, pain medication, no known allergies. She answered quickly, almost mechanically, because answering was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Then they took him into surgery, and Lily was left in the hallway wearing a wedding dress that no longer looked like a wedding dress. Nora arrived first, breathless and shaking, leaning on the arm of a neighbor who had driven her from the church. When she saw Lily, her face collapsed. Lily stood, and for 1 second she was a child again, wanting to be held, wanting someone older to say the world had made a mistake and would fix it. Nora wrapped her arms around her. "Oh, baby," she whispered. "What happened to you?" Lily shook her head against her grandmother's shoulder. "He stepped in front of me." Nora understood enough, maybe too much. She held Lily tighter and looked toward the surgery doors. Caleb arrived 20 minutes later. He came with his parents, and a face full of controlled outrage, as if the day had wronged him personally. His mother stared at Lily's blood-stained dress with disgust, thinly disguised as concern. His father spoke quietly with a deputy near the waiting room entrance. Caleb walked straight toward Lily. "You made a spectacle of us," he said under his breath. Lily slowly turned. For the first time in her life, she did not feel afraid of him. She felt tired, tired in a way that reached bone. "A man was stabbed," she said, "because of you." Nora's hand tightened around Lily's wrist. Caleb leaned closer, keeping his voice low enough that others would not hear the ugliness clearly. "You ran off in your wedding dress. You let that rich man follow you. Now half the town is talking. Duke is missing, and my family's name is dragged into your mess." Lily looked at him, really looked, and wondered how she had ever mistaken pressure for protection. "You're worried about your name?" she asked. "I'm worried about what happens next." His eyes flicked toward Nora. "My father has been patient, very patient, but patience has limits." There it was again, the debt, the invisible rope. Even in a hospital hallway, with Ethan fighting for his life behind closed doors, Caleb still knew exactly where to place his hand around Lily's throat without touching her. Nora lifted her chin. "Don't you threaten my granddaughter." Caleb's smile returned, soft and poisonous. "Mrs. Harper, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm reminding Lily that choices have consequences." Lily felt something inside her go still. "Then remind yourself," she said, "that so does forcing someone to marry you." Caleb's face changed, just for a second. It was enough. Before he could answer, the surgery doors opened, and a nurse stepped out. Lily turned so fast she nearly stumbled. "He's still in surgery," the nurse said gently. "The wound was deep, but he made it here alive. That matters. Alive." The word broke Lily more than any certainty could have. She sank into a chair, pressed both hands over her mouth, and cried silently while Nora sat beside her and rubbed her back. Hours passed. The waiting room emptied and filled again. Coffee went cold in paper cups. The sun disappeared outside the windows. Lily changed into hospital scrubs a nurse quietly offered her, but she kept the ruined dress folded in a plastic bag at her feet because she did not know where else to put the evidence of the day her life had split open. Near midnight, a black SUV stopped outside the emergency entrance. Margaret Caldwell walked in, as if she had forced the entire night to make room for her. Her hair was perfect, her coat was expensive. Her face, however, was not as controlled as usual. Fear had cracked something near her eyes. She saw Lily first. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Margaret looked toward the surgical wing. "Where is my son?" Lily stood, still in recovery. "The doctor said the bleeding is controlled." Margaret's gaze dropped to Lily's hands. Even after washing them 3 times, faint red remained around her fingernails. "You were with him?" "Yes." "Why?" The question was not gentle, but it was not cruel either. It sounded like a mother asking the one thing she could not understand. Lily answered the only way she knew how, "Because he was there for me when someone tried to hurt me." Margaret closed her eyes briefly. For years, she had believed money could prevent chaos, hire better security, choose better doctors, control the guest list, control the story, control the sun. But here was the truth, standing in front of her in borrowed scrubs, exhausted and poor and covered in the memory of Ethan's blood. And Margaret had no way to polish it into something easier. "I want him moved to New York as soon as he is stable," Margaret said. Lily stiffened. He shouldn't be moved too soon. You are not his doctor. No, Lily said, but I know what his body is like after trauma. I know what happens when he wakes up confused. I know bright lights hurt him when he's in pain. I know he fights sedation if he hears too many voices. Margaret stared at her. Lily's voice lowered. You can hate me if you want. You can think I don't belong anywhere near him, but don't punish him for loving someone you didn't choose. The words shocked them both. Margaret looked away first. When Ethan was finally moved to a private room, he did not wake. Machines breathed in soft rhythms beside him. An IV line ran into his arm. Bandages wrapped his side. His face looked younger in unconsciousness, stripped of wealth, pride, and everything the world used to make him seem untouchable. Lily stood at the doorway, unable to move. The last time she had seen him in a bed like this, she had been an employee. She had known where to place the medicine, how to adjust the curtains, when to call the nurse. Now every step toward him felt personal enough to hurt. Margaret sat in the chair beside the bed for the first hour, then two, then, near dawn. Exhaustion pulled at her posture, but she refused to leave. Lily stood quietly near the wall. Finally, Margaret spoke without looking at her. He said your name in the car. Lily's breath caught. When I was driving here, Margaret continued, the hospital called. They told me he was unconscious, but before the ambulance arrived, before they took him in, he kept saying your name. Lily looked at Ethan. Margaret's voice turned thin. I thought you were a mistake. Lily did not answer. I may still be afraid that you are. Margaret looked up then, and for the first time there was no ice in her eyes, only fear. But I saw my son tonight. Not the Caldwell heir, not the man in the magazines. My son, and you were the one covered in his blood. It was not an apology, not yet, but it was the first honest thing Margaret had ever given her. For the next 3 days, Lily barely left Ethan's room. She slept in the chair when Nora forced her to close her eyes. She learned the nurses' names. She kept the curtains half drawn because she remembered the way light had once cut through Ethan's headaches. She asked for quieter alarms when possible. She wiped his face with a damp cloth when fever warmed his skin. She spoke to him, even when he did not answer. At first, she told him practical things. It's Tuesday. You're at County General. Your mother is here. Nora brought soup, but the nurses won't let me feed it to you, which is probably for the best because hospital rules are stronger than grandmothers. Then, when the room was quiet, she told him things she had never said before. I was scared when I left, she whispered one night. Not because I didn't care, because I cared too much, and I thought caring about you would make me disappear. The heart monitor kept its steady rhythm. I hated you for that kiss, she said, but I hated myself more for wishing it had been real. Ethan did not wake. On the 4th day, Blake Harrington appeared in the hallway holding flowers that looked too expensive and completely useless. Lily saw him before he saw her. For a second, anger rose so hot she almost could not breathe. Blake stopped when he recognized her. He looked smaller than he had at the party, less polished. Shame did that to men who were not used to carrying it. Lily, he said, I'm sorry. She stared at him. He swallowed. I was drunk. I was stupid. I didn't think. No, Lily cut in. You thought exactly enough to know people would laugh. Blake's face reddened. You made me a dare, she continued quietly. And Ethan made the mistake of accepting it. But don't stand here and pretend it was harmless. A rich man's joke can become a poor woman's humiliation for the rest of her life. Blake looked down at the flowers. I know, he said. No, you're learning. There's a difference. He nodded, unable to defend himself. Margaret watched from the end of the hallway. She heard every word. So did Nora, who sat with a blanket around her shoulders and an expression that suggested she had never liked Blake without needing to meet him first. That evening, Ethan moved his hand. It was small, barely anything. Lily was adjusting the blanket when his fingers twitched near hers. She froze. Ethan. His eyelids shifted. His breathing changed. She leaned closer. Ethan, can you hear me? His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then searching. Pain crossed his face, followed by confusion, then recognition. Lily, he rasped. The sound of her name in his voice nearly undid her. I'm here, she said, taking his hand carefully. Don't try to move." His gaze drifted over her face, as if he was checking whether she was real. "You're okay." She let out a breath that almost became a laugh and almost became a sob. "You got stabbed and that's your first question?" His mouth moved faintly. Maybe a smile, maybe only pain. "Duke?" he whispered. "Gone. Police are looking for him." "Caleb?" Lily's face changed. Ethan saw it even through the haze. "What happened?" "Not now," she said. "You need to rest." His fingers tightened weakly around hers. "Don't go back to him." Lily closed her eyes. Before she could answer, the door opened. Caleb stood there. He held a folder in one hand, his face arranged into public concern. Behind him, his father waited in the hallway with the deputy, speaking in the low, confident voice of a man used to being believed. "Lily," Caleb said, "we need to talk." Ethan tried to sit up and gasped from the pain. Lily moved instantly, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "Don't," she whispered. "Please." Caleb watched the gesture. His jaw tightened. "My family has been patient," he said. "But this situation has gone far enough. The church, the river, the police questions, all of it. You need to come home and settle this before it gets uglier." Ethan's eyes sharpened despite the drugs. "She's not going anywhere with you." Caleb looked at him with cold amusement. "You're in no position to decide that." Lily stood between them, feeling the room shrink around her. Nora's house, the debt, the hospital bill, Caleb's father, the town whispering. Ethan, pale and wounded in the bed, because he had protected her once when no one else had. She wanted to choose him. That was the cruelest part. But Caleb placed the folder on the small table by the door and opened it. Copies of loan papers, interest notices, legal threats. Nora's address printed in black letters that made the little white house by the river look suddenly fragile. "If you don't come with me," Caleb said softly, "my father files tomorrow." Lily looked at the papers. Ethan's voice came rough from the bed. "I'll pay it." Lily turned to him sharply. "No." "Lily." "No." Her eyes filled, but she kept her voice steady. "I will not walk out of one man's debt and into another man's rescue. That's not what this is. It will feel like that to me." The room went silent. Ethan understood then. Not fully, maybe, but enough. Money could save a house and still wound a person if it became another hand around their choices. Lily picked up the folder with shaking fingers. "I'll go talk to him," she said. Nora stood. "Lily, no, I'll come back." But she did not look at Ethan when she said it, because if she did, she might not leave. At the door, she reached up out of habit to touch her hair. The small clip holding it back loosened. She caught it. Then someone in the hallway called her name. Caleb's mother, the deputy. Too many voices at once. The clip slipped from Lily's fingers and fell beneath the chair near Ethan's bed. No one noticed. Lily walked out with Caleb. Ethan tried to call after her, but pain stole his voice. The monitors beside him quickened. Margaret rushed in. Nora followed, crying now. Nurses came. Hands pushed him gently back against the pillows. "Find her," he forced out. "Ethan, you can barely breathe," Margaret said. His eyes burned into hers. "Mom, find her." Margaret looked at the doorway where Lily had disappeared. For the first time, she did not argue. But by the time anyone reached the parking lot, Caleb's truck was gone. Later, when the room had quieted and Ethan lay staring at the ceiling, fighting pain, fear, and the helpless rage of a man trapped inside his own injured body, a nurse bent to pick up the blanket that had slipped from the chair. Something small clicked against the floor. Ethan turned his head. The nurse picked it up. "Is this hers?" It was Lily's hair clip. The same kind of clip he had once found on his pillow after the 4th of July party. The same small, ordinary thing that had somehow become the only map he had left to her heart. Ethan took it with trembling fingers. And in that moment, he understood with perfect clarity that Lily had not left him because she wanted to. She had been taken back by the debt. This time, he would not chase her to apologize. This time, he would go to set her free. The first time Ethan searched for Lily, he was driven by guilt. But the second time, he was driven by the terrifying certainty that love meant nothing unless it gave her back the right to choose. He should not have left the hospital that night. The doctor said it plainly. The wound was deep. His body needed rest. One wrong movement could reopen what the surgeons had barely managed to close. But Ethan Caldwell had spent too much of his life obeying the wrong rules and ignoring the right ones. He had stayed silent when Blake turned Lily into a joke. He had acted when he should have asked. He had watched her walk away once because he did not understand the cost of his mistake. He would not lie still while Caleb Reed dragged her back into a cage built from debt. Margaret found him sitting on the edge of the hospital bed before dawn, one hand pressed against his bandaged side, the other holding Lily's hair clip like it was something holy. "You are not going anywhere," she said from the doorway. Ethan looked up. His face was pale, his breathing controlled only by force. She didn't leave on her own. "I know." That stopped him. Margaret stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. She was not dressed like the perfect Caldwell matriarch now. Her hair was pulled back. Her coat was wrinkled. Fear had made her human, in a way Ethan had rarely seen. "I made calls," she said. "Caleb Reed's family owns half the rental property in that town. They have money, but not Caldwell money. Influence, but not clean influence. Your lawyer is already looking into the loan." Ethan stared at her. "You believe me?" Margaret's eyes moved to the hair clip in his hand. "No, I believe her." For a moment, Ethan could not speak. Margaret walked closer. "If you love that girl, do not make the mistake every powerful man in this family has made." "What mistake?" "Thinking rescue and possession are the same thing." Her voice lowered. "Do not buy her. Do not drag her back. Do not make her grateful. Give her the truth. Give her protection. And then let her decide." It was the first time his mother had sounded less like a gatekeeper and more like a woman who had learned too late what control could destroy. Ethan nodded once. "Then help me." By 7 that morning, Walter Hayes, the Caldwell family attorney, was in a conference room at County General with a laptop, 2 legal assistants on video call, and a stack of documents pulled from public records. Walter was a thin man in his late 50s with silver glasses and the calm voice of someone who made dangerous people nervous by never raising it. "The Reed loan is messy," Walter said. "That's the polite word." Ethan sat across from him, sweating beneath his shirt from the pain, but refusing to lean back. Meaning the original hospital payment was real. The later debt structure may not be. There are handwritten addendums, unexplained interest increases, and a transfer of obligation from Nora Harper to Lily Harper that appears to have been signed under questionable circumstances. Margaret folded her arms. "Can it be challenged?" "Very much so." "Fast?" Walter looked at Ethan. "Fast enough to stop a forced wedding?" "Yes." "Fast enough to undo years of fear?" "That depends on Miss Harper." Ethan looked down at the hair clip in his palm. At noon, Blake Harrington arrived with more than shame this time. He entered the conference room without his usual grin. His shirt was untucked. His eyes were red, either from no sleep or the first honest guilt of his life. "I found something," Blake said. Ethan's expression hardened. "If this is another apology." "It's not." Blake placed his phone on the table. "After Lily left the hospital, I went to the parking lot. I saw Caleb talking to a man near the side exit. I didn't know who he was, so I recorded part of it." Walter took the phone. The video was shaky, filmed from behind a hospital column. Caleb's voice was low but clear enough. "She comes with me tonight. I don't care what she saw by the river. Duke was supposed to scare her, not lose his mind." Then another voice, rougher, angry. "You said nobody would get hurt." Caleb replied, "Then you should have controlled the situation." The room went silent. Ethan's hand tightened so hard around the chair arm that pain shot through his side. Margaret whispered, "Caleb sent Duke after her?" "Maybe not to stab anyone," Walter said carefully. "But this is enough to involve law enforcement." Ethan stood too fast and nearly collapsed. Margaret caught his arm. "Ethan, I'm going." Walter shut the laptop. "Then we go legally, with documents, with the sheriff, with witnesses, not like a wounded man looking for a fight." That was the difference now. The old Ethan might have stormed into Mill Creek with money and rage, The man Lily had forced him to become understood that truth needed to arrive stronger than anger. By late afternoon, 3 cars pulled onto the gravel road outside the Reed family house. The home was large by Mill Creek standards, with a wraparound porch, white fencing, and flower boxes that made it look respectable from the road. Respectability, Ethan was learning, was often the prettiest mass cruelty wore. Lily was inside. She stood in the living room beside Nora, who looked fragile but furious in her Sunday cardigan. Caleb's father, Warren Reed, sat at the dining table with papers spread in front of him. Caleb stood behind Lily, close enough that Ethan's vision went red when he saw it. Lily turned when Ethan entered. For 1 second, relief broke through her face before fear closed over it again. "You shouldn't be out of the hospital. You shouldn't be here against your will." Caleb laughed softly. There it is, the billionaire savior. Ethan did not move toward Lily. He wanted to. Every part of him wanted to cross the room and put himself between her and Caleb. But Margaret's warning echoed inside him. Do not drag her back. Let her decide. So he stayed by the door. Walter Hayes stepped forward. "Mr. Reed, I represent Ethan Caldwell, and at this moment I also have reason to believe Lily Harper may require independent legal protection." Warren Reed frowned. "This is a family matter." "No," Walter said. "It became a legal matter when your son attempted to use a disputed medical debt to pressure Miss Harper into marriage." A murmur moved through the people gathered near the porch. Neighbors had already drifted close, drawn by the arrival of the Caldwell cars, the sheriff's vehicle, and the scent of scandal. In Mill Creek, privacy lasted only until the first truck slowed down. Caleb noticed the crowd and changed his face immediately. His voice softened. "Lily, tell them. Nobody forced you. We were going to get married because we care about each other." Lily stared at him. There were years inside that stare. Years of swallowed anger. Years of being told gratitude was obedience. Years of wondering whether her grandmother's life had been purchased with her own. Caleb stepped closer. "Tell them." Ethan saw her hands tremble. But Lily did not move back. "No," she said. The word was quiet, but everyone heard it. Caleb's smile froze. Lily lifted her chin. "I agreed because your family held my grandmother's hospital bill over my head. I agreed because I thought if I didn't, she would lose her house. I agreed because every time I tried to say no, you reminded me what your father paid." Warren Reed stood. "That is an ugly way to describe generosity." Nora's voice cut through the room. "Generosity doesn't come with a wedding date." A few people outside whispered. Walter placed copies of the loan papers on the table. The interest calculations on these documents are inconsistent. Several provisions may violate state lending laws, and this signature transferring responsibility to Miss Harper will need forensic review. Caleb's face darkened. "You think fancy lawyers scare us?" "No," Walter said. "Evidence does." Blake stepped into the doorway. For once, he did not look rich or amused. He looked like a man standing in the wreckage of his own choices. He gave his phone to the sheriff. "You need to hear this." The recording played. Caleb's voice filled the room. Duke was supposed to scare her. Lily went pale. Ethan watched the words strike her, not because she had never suspected Caleb of cruelty, but because suspicion and proof wounded differently. Caleb had not merely taken advantage of her fear. He had placed danger on the road in front of her and called it fate. The sheriff turned to Caleb. "You want to explain that?" Caleb's composure finally cracked. "That recording is out of context." "What context makes that sound better?" Nora snapped. Warren Reed pointed toward Blake. "This is illegal. You can't just record people." Walter adjusted his glasses. "We can discuss admissibility later. Right now, we have enough for questioning and protective action." Caleb looked at Lily, and the mask fell completely. "You think he loves you?" he said. "He humiliated you in front of his rich friends. He'll get bored. Men like him always do. At least I was offering you a real life." Lily stepped forward. Ethan held his breath. "No," she said. "You were offering me a bill and calling it a marriage." The room went still. Lily reached down and pulled the simple engagement ring from her finger. It had never fit quite right. It slid off more easily than she expected. She placed it on the table among the loan papers. "I am not marrying you." Caleb's face twisted. "Then pay what you owe." Ethan took one step forward. But Lily lifted a hand without looking at him, not to reject him, to stop him from speaking for her. She turned to Walter. "If the debt is legal, I'll face it legally. If it isn't, I want it challenged, but I won't pay with my life." Walter nodded. "That is exactly the right answer." Only then did Ethan breathe. He took an envelope from inside his jacket and placed it beside Lily, not in her hands. "There's another option," he said quietly. "A medical relief foundation my company funds. It helps families trapped by predatory hospital debt. Walter can apply your grandmother's case through the same process as anyone else. You won't owe me. You won't owe my family. And you can say no." Lily looked at the envelope, then at him. This was the moment Ethan had feared most. Not Caleb, not the sheriff, not the wound pulling painfully at his side. This. Whether Lily would see help or another chain. "You did not pay it?" she asked. "No." "You did not buy the paper from them?" "No." "You're not asking me to come back with you?" His voice softened. "No." Something changed in Lily's face. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the first small space where trust could one day return. Caleb lunged suddenly, grabbing Lily's wrist. "We're not done." Ethan moved on instinct, but Lily moved first. She twisted out of Caleb's grip and slapped him so hard the ring on the table jumped from the force of it. It was not like the slap she had given Ethan under the fireworks. That one had been pain. This one was release. "Don't touch me again," Lily said. The sheriff stepped between them and took Caleb by the arm. Outside, the crowd had gone silent. For the first time in years, Mill Creek was not whispering about Lily Harper as the poor girl who owed the Reeds. They were watching Caleb Reed be led out of his own respectable house while the woman he thought he owned stood upright in the doorway. Lily walked onto the porch. The late afternoon sun touched her face. Nora stood beside her. Ethan stayed a few steps behind, giving her room, giving her choice, giving her the dignity he had failed to protect before. Lily looked at the neighbors, the sheriff, the lawyers, the man who had tried to make her a debt, and the man who had finally learned not to make himself her answer. Then she spoke clearly. "I would rather be poor for the rest of my life than become the wife of a man who thinks helping someone gives him the right to own her." No one answered. No one needed to. For one brief moment, Lily Harper was free. Then another sheriff's car pulled up fast, tires scraping gravel. A young deputy stepped out, his expression tense. "Sheriff," he called. "We found Duke Mason." Lily's breath caught. The sheriff turned. "Alive?" "Alive. But he's claiming Miss Harper set him up by the river. Says Mr. Caldwell attacked first because of her." Ethan's jaw tightened. Nora whispered Lily's name. The deputy looked at Lily, uncomfortable but official. "Miss Harper, we're going to need you to come down to the station and answer some questions about the stabbing." And just like that, the freedom Lily had fought so hard to claim was placed under another shadow. Lily had finally broken Caleb's hold on her, but before she could even take her first breath as a free woman, the town that had watched her suffer now wanted her to defend the truth. The sheriff's station sat 2 blocks from the church, a low brick building with an American flag hanging above the door and a row of dusty windows facing Main Street. By the time Lily stepped inside, word had already spread. People stood outside the diner, near the hardware store, beside pickup trucks with their arms crossed, pretending they were not staring. Mill Creek had always loved a story, especially when the story made a poor woman explain why she deserved mercy. Ethan walked beside her, one hand pressed against his bandaged side. Every step hurt him. Lily could see it in the tight line of his mouth, in the way his breathing changed when he thought no one was paying attention. But he did not complain. He did not reach for her. He did not tell her what to do. He simply stayed close enough for her to know he was there, and far enough for her to choose whether she needed him. That small distance meant more to her than any rescue. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, old paper, and rain that had not yet fallen. The sheriff asked Lily to sit in a small interview room with a metal table and 2 chairs. Nora waited outside with Margaret Caldwell, a combination Lily never imagined she would see. Her grandmother in a worn cardigan beside the polished mother of a billionaire, both women silent, both afraid for the same girl. Ethan wanted to stay with Lily, but Walter Hayes placed a hand on his shoulder. "She needs to give her statement without pressure," the attorney said quietly. Ethan looked through the glass at Lily. She was sitting upright, hands folded, face pale but steady. "I know," he said. And this time, he meant it. The questioning began gently. The sheriff was not a cruel man, but he was a man of a town that had spent too long believing the Reeds. He asked where Lily had gone after leaving the church. He asked why Ethan followed her. He asked whether she had spoken to Duke before. He asked whether Ethan had attacked first. Lily answered each question slowly. "I went to the river because I needed to breathe. Duke found me there. He blocked my way. He grabbed my wrist. Ethan told him to let me go. Duke hit him first." "And the knife?" the sheriff asked. Lily's eyes lowered for the first time. The room seemed to shrink around that word, knife. "He pulled it from his boot," she said. "Ethan pushed me behind him. That's when Duke stabbed him." The sheriff wrote something down. Lily leaned forward, her voice quiet but firm. "Ethan didn't go there to fight. He went there because he saw someone hurting me." Outside the interview room, Ethan closed his eyes. For most of his life, people had defended him because of his last name, his money, his family's power. But Lily was defending him because it was true. That difference cut through him. Then the door opened. Blake Harrington stepped into the station, holding his phone like it weighed more than guilt. Behind him came a teenage boy in a baseball cap, nervous and sunburned, twisting the hem of his t-shirt in his hands. "This is Tyler Brooks," Blake told the sheriff. "He was fishing near the lower bank when it happened." Tyler swallowed hard. "I didn't want trouble." The sheriff gave him a tired look. "Son, trouble already came. Sit down." Tyler's statement changed everything. He had heard Lily yell for Duke to let go. He had seen Duke shove her. He had seen Ethan step between them. He had seen the knife flash. And because teenagers filmed almost everything, Tyler had recorded the last part on his phone without even knowing how important it would become. The video was shaky. The sound was rough, but the truth did not need to be pretty. Duke's voice came through clearly. "Maybe you just need someone to remind you where you belong." Then Lily's scream. Then Ethan's voice. "Get your hands off her." No lawyer, no money, no family name could bend those words into anything else. The sheriff watched the video twice. Then he removed his glasses, rubbed his face, and looked at Lily through the open door of the interview room. "Miss Harper," he said, "you're not being charged with anything." The breath left her body so suddenly she almost folded in half. Nora cried first. Margaret turned away, blinking hard. Ethan stood completely still, as if relief had hit him too deeply to show. But freedom, Lily was learning, did not always feel like joy at first. Sometimes it felt like exhaustion. Sometimes it felt like standing after years underwater and realizing you had forgotten how to breathe air. Caleb Reed was brought in for further questioning before sunset. He did not look at Lily as deputies led him past the hallway. His father argued loudly with the sheriff, threatening attorneys, elections, reputations, and every weapon powerful small-town men used when truth began to move against them. But the town had heard enough. By evening, Duke's claim had fallen apart. Tyler's video, Blake's recording, and Lily's statement lined up too clearly. Duke had attacked. Caleb had known more than he admitted. And for the first time in Mill Creek, the Reed name did not sound like protection. It sounded like evidence. When Lily finally stepped outside the sheriff's station, the sky had turned purple over Main Street. The 4th of July flag still hung from storefronts, faded now in the evening light. People watched her, but the whispers were different, some ashamed, some curious, some too late. Lily did not wait for anyone to apologize. She walked toward the river. Ethan followed only after Nora touched his arm and nodded. The riverbank looked peaceful now, almost innocent. The grass still bent where the struggle had happened. A strip of police tape fluttered near a tree. The water moved slow under the dimming sky, carrying everything away and keeping everything at once. Lily stood near the flat stone where she had cried in her wedding dress. Ethan stopped a few feet behind her. "I'm sorry," he said. She gave a sad little smile without turning. "You already said that." "Not for the same thing." Now she looked back. Ethan's face was pale from pain and exhaustion, but his eyes were clear. "I'm sorry for thinking love could be proven in front of people. I'm sorry for making you feel like my feelings mattered more than your dignity. I'm sorry I didn't understand that helping you means nothing if I take your choice away while doing it." Lily's eyes filled slowly. "I hated you that night," she whispered. "I know, but not because you kissed me." Her voice trembled. "Because part of me wanted that kiss first, and then you made Ethan looked down. "I can't undo it," he said. "No, but I can spend the rest of my life never making you feel small again." Lily turned fully toward him. "Don't promise me forever right now." The pain in his face changed, but he nodded. "Okay. I mean it, Ethan. I can't go from Caleb's debt straight into your arms and call that freedom. I need to know who I am when no man is standing between me and the world." He understood then that love was not the moment he found her. It was whether he could let her stand alone without treating it like rejection. "I'll wait," he said. "No," Lily answered gently. "Live, heal, fix what you need to fix. If I come back, it has to be because I choose it, not because you waited like a man outside a locked door." For the first time that day, Ethan almost smiled. It hurt his wound, but he did it anyway. Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out the small brown hair clip. She had found it in Ethan's hand before leaving the hospital room earlier, and he had given it back to her without a word. Now she placed it in his palm again. "Keep it," she said, "but understand what it means." His fingers closed around it carefully. "Tell me. It doesn't mean you own a piece of me. It doesn't mean I'm coming back tomorrow." She took a breath. "It means there was something real between us before we both got scared." Ethan looked at the clip, then at her. "And if you never come back?" Lily's voice softened. "Then remember me right." She stepped closer and kissed his cheek, not his mouth. A gentle kiss. A goodbye that did not close the door completely. Then she walked away from the river, toward Nora's old White House, toward the first night of her life that did not belong to Caleb, to debt, or to the shame Ethan had left beneath fireworks. Ethan stayed by the water until the sky went dark. He held the hair clip in his hand and understood that love had finally asked him to do the one thing wealth had never taught him. Let go without turning away. 3 weeks later, when the Caldwell name was dragged into headlines and every guest from the Independence Day party was called to answer for what they saw, Ethan walked into a private hearing, ready to lose his reputation. He did not know Lily Harper was already on her way there. 3 weeks of silence did not erase what happened between them. It only gave Ethan enough time to decide whether he would protect his image or finally tell the truth. The private hearing was held inside a glass-walled conference room on the top floor of Caldwell Tower, high above Manhattan, where the city looked clean and distant enough for wealthy people to believe consequences belonged to someone else. Reporters waited downstairs. Board members sat behind polished wood. Lawyers whispered over folders. Margaret Caldwell stood near the window in a black suit, her face calm, but her eyes fixed on her son. Ethan entered without hiding the wound that still made him move slowly. The room went quiet. Blake Harrington sat at the far end of the table, pale and stripped of his usual arrogance. Several guests from the 4th of July party had been called to give statements. Some looked embarrassed. Some looked annoyed. A few looked frightened, because rich people were comfortable laughing at cruelty until someone asked them to describe it under oath. Ethan took his seat. Walter Hayes leaned toward him. "You can still keep this narrow. Admit poor judgment, deny intent, protect the company." Ethan looked at the folder in front of him. Inside were statements, timelines, press summaries, and one photograph taken from a guest's phone. Lily in her old blue maid uniform, Ethan holding her after that cruel dare, fireworks exploding above them. The picture had traveled online without her consent, turned into gossip, jokes, and headlines. He closed the folder. "No," he said. "I'm done protecting the wrong thing." The hearing began with questions about the party, the kiss, the fight in Kentucky, and the public embarrassment surrounding the Caldwell family. Board members wanted distance. Lawyers wanted careful words. Margaret wanted control, though even she no longer seemed certain control was the same as dignity. Then Ethan stood. "I kissed Lily Harper in front of my guests on the 4th of July, he said. "Not because she asked me to, Not because the moment belonged to both of us. I did it because my friend turned her into a dare, and I was too proud, too cowardly, and too selfish to defend her the right way. No one moved. Blake lowered his head. Ethan continued, his voice steady. Lily was not a scandal. She was not entertainment. She was the woman who cared for me when I was injured, when I was angry, when I was weak enough that most people in my world stayed away. And when she deserved my respect in public, I failed her. Margaret's face tightened, but she did not interrupt. One board member cleared his throat. Mr. Caldwell, this is a serious reputational matter. Yes, Ethan said. Hers. The room fell silent again. For the first time in his life, Ethan understood that truth did not need to sound powerful. It only needed to stand still long enough for lies to look ashamed. Blake rose next. His hand shook slightly as he faced the room. I made the dare, he said. I laughed first. I encouraged others to laugh. I treated Lily like she was beneath us because I knew everyone in that garden would let me. I can't undo it, but I can say clearly that what happened was my fault too. She deserved an apology before she ever deserved a headline. Ethan looked at him. It did not erase the damage, but it mattered that the truth was no longer Lily's burden alone. Then the doors opened. Every face turned. Lily Harper stood at the entrance. She was not wearing a maid uniform. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pinned back, her shoulders straight. Nora stood beside her, one hand on her cane. Behind them, Walter's assistant held the door as if she already understood that this woman had not come to be rescued. Ethan forgot how to breathe. Lily met his eyes, only for a second, then walked into the room. I didn't come here for money, she said. I didn't come here to be pitied. I came because too many people have talked about me like I wasn't there. No one dared speak. She looked around the table, at the board members, the guests, the lawyers, and finally at Blake. People think humiliation ends when the room goes quiet. It doesn't. It follows you. It gets repeated by strangers. It makes you question whether kindness was ever real or just another thing people with power take when they want it. Her voice did not shake. I worked in that house. I cared for Ethan because he was hurt, not because he was rich. And the night he kissed me in front of all of you, I slapped him because I needed one person in that garden to remember I was human. If none of you would do it, I had to. Margaret slowly lowered her eyes. Then she stood. For a woman like Margaret Caldwell, apology did not come easily. It had to cross generations of pride before it reached her mouth. Miss Harper, she said, I judged you by where you came from, instead of how you carried yourself. I allowed silence to become cruelty. For that, I am sorry. Lily watched her for a long moment. Thank you, she said. It was not forgiveness wrapped in a bow. It was only a door unlocked. After the hearing, the reporters downstairs received a statement, but Ethan did not care about the headlines anymore. He found Lily in the rooftop garden, where wind moved softly through the city flowers and the glass towers reflected the late afternoon sun. For a moment, neither of them spoke. I didn't know you were coming, he said. I know. You didn't have to. I didn't do it for you. A small smile touched her lips. Not only for you. Ethan nodded. Good. That answer surprised her, maybe pleased her. He took one step closer, then stopped. Can I hold your hand? Lily looked at him. The question was simple, almost painfully simple, but after everything, it meant more than any kiss under fireworks ever could. Yes, she said. He took her hand carefully, like trust was something alive. I'm not coming back as your maid, Lily said. I don't want you to. I'm not coming back because you saved me. I know, and I'm not promising forever today. Ethan's eyes softened. Then promise me today. Lily looked out over the city, then back at him. Today, I choose to stay. 1 year later, on the 4th of July, the Caldwell estate held another outdoor party. But this time, there was no dare, no cruel laughter, no woman in a blue uniform being watched like entertainment. Lily stood beside Ethan under the summer sky, not as someone he had rescued, not as someone his world had finally permitted, but as the woman who had chosen her own place in it. When the fireworks began, Ethan did not pull her close. He waited. Lily smiled, lifted her hand to his cheek, and kissed him first. And under the colors of Independence Day, the girl who had once run from that estate with a broken heart finally understood freedom was not being untouched by pain. Freedom was being able to choose love without losing yourself. If this story touched your heart, tell us what you think in the comments. Did Ethan deserve Lily's forgiveness? If you believe he earned a second chance, press number 1. If you think Lily should have walked away forever, press number 0. And if you want more emotional stories about love, dignity, betrayal, and second chances, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.